This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Point blank, it's the worst coached Michigan football team I've seen in my 41 years as a fan. Next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Gets caught.
They said you can't be Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it, and in. Touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace, and welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. We'll be joined by Mark Rogers here in just a little bit. I know I told you before the start of the year that I'm good. I'm zen. I don't really care what their record is for the next couple of years. I think I even said, I don't care if we're 7-5 this year. And many of you said there's no way they're going 7-5, but you'd care. Right now, I'd take 7-5. That's a pipe dream. Because what I never anticipated was possible is that we would see the floor cave in on the Michigan football program. But this is where we are. And now you're in a position where if some things don't change here in the next few weeks, and then those empowered to make such decisions don't make the decisions that need to be made a few weeks from now, should that unfortunately happen, you are looking at a multi-year hole to dig out of here. Now, when I say this is after what we saw against Illinois, a 2-week layoff, and you come out with that effort, you come out with the lowest point total you've scored since 2014. It's only the third time Michigan has ever lost in Champaign since 1958. 1958. Only the third loss in Champaign since 1958. Jack Tuttle and that offense looked really high school, and it was frankly embarrassing. It looked like exactly what I told you it was going to look like. The guy's been in college football for 7 years. He's not a savior. All he's learned how to do is turn the ball over and get hurt. And if he's your savior, your season's beyond saving. I know there's a lot of people that get mad at this and when I say stuff like that in the comments section because, human beings, a lot of you are just nicer people than me. And so you want hope. I'd like it, but if it's not there, I won't make it up. This has been brewing since the opening week of the season. And now you can retcon and go back to the start And you can see this thing was broken from the start. 3 different starting quarterbacks. We're only halfway through the season. The coaching staff has already played their last card. They have no more cards to play. We're now at the COVID year. Can we just end this thing? Can there be some outbreak of something that just causes us to not play the rest of the season and take the L? Okay, because if we don't Dunkirk this thing, the embarrassments will continue until morale improves. Think I'm wrong? Think I'm overreacting? I want to show you this. Look at this from Zach Shaw over at 24/7 Sports. Through 8 weeks of the 2024 college football season, Michigan ranks 112th in points per game, 113th in yards per play, 117th in turnover margin, 119th in yards per game, 120th in first downs per game, 122nd in turnovers lost, 130th in scrimmage plays of more than 10 yards, and 131st in scrimmage plays of 20-plus yards. But wait, ShamWow, there's more. Michigan is 113th in interceptions, 118th in passing touchdowns, 127th in passer rating, 128th in passing first downs, 129th in passing yards per game, 129th in passes of 10-plus yards, 130th in passes of 20-plus yards, and 132nd in yards per pass attempt. That's what I mean by high school. There's 134 teams in college football. The worst coach team I've ever seen at Michigan. Rich Rod at least had an excuse. He had Stephen Thritt and Nick Sheridan. But they still had a big play or two every game. They just couldn't sustain it. This is inexcusable. It's unacceptable. And I cannot think of, I've been paid to cover this sport professionally for many years. And frankly, I've watched so much of it as a fan for free. I might as well have been getting paid many of those years as well. So 41 years of following this sport personally and professionally nationwide. And I cannot think of a time that a new coach was hired and the side of the ball that he comes from sucked from the beginning, and that coach went on to accomplish anything meaningful. This is not sustainable. This thing has been botched from the very beginning. And worse yet, it's frankly embarrassing. You're making your own fans turn games off. It's just frankly embarrassing. And then tell me what we're building for the future. We don't know. We have no track record of knowing. I'm telling you right now, and I know it seems crazy, if they lose to Michigan State Saturday, and I believe they will, he's in real trouble of surviving. Sherrone Moore. I mean, we put those stats up against what was the softest part of our schedule. Now, the schedule is not soft in either part, but we still have number 1 Oregon, number 4 Ohio State, who probably is closer to number 1, on the road at Indiana. Our in-state rival here with a better coach and a better quarterback, they're happy to be 4-3. And don't think that, first of all, no Michigan football coaches traditionally lose to Michigan State in their first year anyway, going back to Bo. Bo did, Mo did, Lloyd did, Rich Rod did, Jimmy did, Brady did. I mean, it would make Jonathan Smith's entire campaign legit to win this game. This thing has been systemically botched. And it's very clear they didn't develop anybody. It's very clear they misread their room. Well, Steve, you said there wasn't really anybody in the portal. There wasn't. For example, Curtis Rourke at Indiana, he committed December 28th. On December 28th, we didn't know if we hadn't played the Rose Bowl for 3 more days. We don't know if Jimmy's gone. We don't know if JJ's gone. We don't know things. But here's the thing you had to have known is whether those guys were any good or not. So then you go find someone. Notre Dame showed 3 quarterbacks in their spring game better than anything we've even remotely shown in any game this year. Go grab one of them. Here's an idea. Develop one of the ones you have. Alex Orji's in his 4th year in this program. Jack Tuttle's in his 2nd year in this and 7th year in college football. Davis Warren's in his 5th year in this program. Have you thought, for example, since Sherrone was coaching that side of the ball this entire time, have you thought about, I don't know, developing any of these guys you had? What were you doing all this time? You had no succession plan? This is inexcusable mismanagement. And if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a team. You can't hide your quarterback in college football, and it just everything else falls apart on your team from there. And that's what you're seeing now. Guys lose faith. Guys lose faith in the coaches and the system. You're seeing that now. This is, as Brady Hoke once famously said, this is Michigan, for God's sakes. It's not manpower. I know what manpower is. I work there. It's a temp agency. Okay? This isn't on-the-job training. This is one of the biggest jobs in all of American sports. And it's very clear from what we've seen so far that this job is over the head of the current head coach. Now, what is not clear is whether that would be the case moving forward. But he needs to provide us some evidence that indicates that. Losing this weekend in prime time at home to a team you just beat 49-0 last week, well, that would be evidence to the contrary. All right, back here on Michigan Podcast, let's get to our good friend and maybe the world's only reasonable bucknut, the one and only Mark Rogers. Check out his channel here, The Voice of College Football, right here on YouTube. Lots of great content covering the greatest sport on earth year-round. So, Mark, you heard what I have to say. All right, so lay it on us. I think the Sherrone Moore era is in definite peril. I think if they lose to Michigan State, the odds he will not return for year two are at least 70%. And this is a very low-end contract. They could get out of this very easily. This isn't the era of before. Guys don't get years to build. It's the NFL now, okay? And that means everything's not for long. And you can't go from where they're at, or what he took over. I mean, this is born on third and getting picked off, and then having a losing season or ending up in the Motor City Bowl. So the goodwill is almost gone for him. There is a lot on the line for him on Saturday. But what are your thoughts?
All right, Steve. Well, I'll start out by saying that I did not initially watch this football game. My son got married this weekend. That's why I'm in a different
congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, my son got married this weekend, so no college football for me on Saturday. So I locked in on Michigan, Illinois. I sat down last night, thought, late night, I'm going to watch this football game. You can't believe how many times I fell asleep trying to watch this Michigan offense play. And I'm not a guy that falls asleep watching football games. So it was a rough watch. Okay, let's back up to Jimmy, if I may call him that. I just think that we are starting to appreciate how great a football coach Jim Harbaugh is, as one of the greatest coaches ever from a college football NFL combination standpoint. And I really have never been able to put my finger on what made him so good, because it was never evident to me listening to him being interviewed by Fox or ESPN or at a podium at a news conference or even in the schemes that they were running. It was something that he was able to instill in those football teams that made them proud to be Michigan Wolverines, to fight for each other and to go to battle each week. And I think the Ohio State issue for years and years was clouding how strong he was in that position. And so we now get that Jim Harbaugh era defined by itself. And so, again, he was just really that good. I never watched a Jim Harbaugh team and thought I was not watching one of the top 15 teams in the country. Even in 2017, when they lost 5 games and went 8-5, I thought I'm watching one of the 15 best teams in the country. Okay, so we arrive here in 2024, and we fell into 2 camps. There were some of us who said, this team's fallen off the rails. They lost all these seniors. They lost Jim Harbaugh and his coaching staff. They're going to win 6 or 7 games. I was leaning that way, but I was won over maybe by you, others, and just the thought that, the Mason Grahams of the world and the Josiah Stewarts and on and on and on coming back, this is a real football program. And as we discussed here many times, I was impressed with the intent of keeping the culture, the philosophies, the coaching staff, and putting things together where everybody had an attachment to each other into Michigan football, that this would work to some degree, that it would work, and that they were going to maybe not win a national championship, but be a 9 or 10 win, a really strong contender for the Big Ten championship. And it just hasn't happened. The quarterback situation was botched. But let me ask you this, Steve. If they had gone out and gotten a transfer quarterback with all of their issues and with all of the ways in which they have just not been well coached this season, if they had a Will Howard at court, we won't even go to the extent of a Cam Ward, a Will Howard, a quarterback that would fit them very well, as we've discussed, how much better would they be with all their flaws and shortcomings compared to 2023? They might be a 6-1 football team right now.
Might be. I mean, Texas, they were outclassed in that game, but I think it's definitely possible. But
that's how important that position is. We play in a sport where that.
And so, how does your offensive coordinator, who becomes your head coach, how does he not know that? I mean, Mark, we didn't have you with us last week when I broached this point, so I want to get your take on it, okay? Because you have also, for about as long as I have, either covered this sport professionally or followed it, intimately, personally. Okay. I cannot think of a team where a new coach takes over and the side of the ball that he comes from is terrible. And then that program goes on to being successful. Like I can't think of anything like that. And everybody always goes back to the Dabo Swinney example. Well, that's it's a little bit like when you get a walk-on quarterback. Well, look at Baker Mayfield. And the reason why everybody uses the Baker Mayfield example, because that's the only example. All right. I mean, everybody else's quarterbacks who are walk-ons suck. Okay. So, I mean, you tell me, outside of, Clemson facing NCAA probation and everything, desperately hiring a wide receiver coach. And it just so happens that it ends up being their version of Bear Bryant. All right. That's a 1 in a million. Okay. And short of that, how often can you think of a team where the side of the ball the head coach comes from has been systemically mismanaged? And then that program goes on under his watch to do great things. Because I can't think of a single example. You cannot hide your quarterback in college football. If you don't have a quarterback in any level of football, you don't have a team. Now, they can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. They can be game managers who are great leaders like Cade McNamara here a few years ago. They can be first-round draft picks like, J.J. McCarthy. They can be great game managers like Wilton Spate was in 2016. All right. They can be guys that stabilize your position with just enough playmaking ability to take you from also-ran to a contender like Shea Patterson in 2018. Right. They can come in. They can be Jags. They can be Jag pluses. They can be elite difference makers. But you have to have one. Otherwise, without one, you don't have a floor. We're halfway through this season. They've started 3 different guys. And it's very clear in the way they all 3 played. They did nothing to develop them. Not just this offseason, but these guys have all been here. This is Jack Tuttle's second full offseason here. Jaden Denegal, who's in his 4th year here, isn't even on the freaking travel team. All right? This is Alex Orji's 4th year in this program. This is Davis Warren's 5th year in this program. Now, I ask you, just name 20, 30 coaches right now in college football that are either great now or have been. If they had this exact team, nothing else has changed. This exact team, would they look as bad as they do right now? And Mark, we know the answer is no, they would not. Okay. So this is a coaching staff that completely mismanaged this and botched this. And it's, this is a different era. I mean, you're not going to you don't get to rebuild anymore. You don't have any guys anymore. It's not even put young guys in and let them develop, because all you're doing is putting on tape what other programs will then come and outbid you for in the portal here in a month and a half, right? So every year now is like the NFL. A third of your roster turns over every year in the NFL. Every year is not for long. Every single year. One year you're the coach of the year, Kevin Stefanski. The next year you're probably going to get fired. Okay. And a lot of times it becomes, if you can't evaluate the quarterback position, because everything else is a variable and it is transient. That's exactly the era of college football we are going into now. I don't think fans truly understand it. I'm telling you right now, if Michigan played Indiana this weekend instead of Michigan State, I'm just telling you, guys would be opting out. I mean, there's nothing to play for. If you're Mason Graham, you're Will Johnson, and you turn down big money to go elsewhere to come back here out of your love for the program, and you're going to risk being a top 10 pick because of the difference between the Music City or Motor City Bowls that you're never playing in anyway? No, it is a totally different sport. And what do we see, Mark, in the NFL? Once it's clear you're out of the playoff chase, what do teams do? Okay. And typically there's one team that's really young and starts off terrible. And these were my Lions back in 21. And they win a few games late in the year. okay, they gel for momentum the next year. But every other team, there's one of those teams every year in December in the NFL. Every other team that's not in the playoffs tanks. Okay. And that's exactly what is going to happen in college football. That's why I picked Maryland last week to beat USC. No, there's no reason to play. They're playing for nothing. Okay. And that's where Michigan is at right now. If they weren't playing Michigan State, I think they would already be in a meltdown mode, even more than they are. I still don't even think they'll win this game. Michigan State's going to have the better quarterback and the better coach. They're going to want to play the game more. Something is broken. They've lost the trust of the players. And when you mismanage the most important position on the field, that happens. When you keep splitting carries between Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullings, that happens. When receivers aren't even being thrown to, that happens. This thing has been systemically botched, systemically.
It's amazing to think that Michigan State and Indiana are better teams than Michigan. Wow. It is something else. So here's my thought about the way you proceed in the future. And I've mentioned this before, that even though it's an immediacy sport now, that if they had a proven coach that was putting up the same results, let's say they had hired Matt Campbell during the offseason or somebody of that caliber, and he was producing these results, that would certainly be a huge disappointment. It would raise some red flags possibly, but you would stick with that guy, at least I would, knowing this guy knows how to run a football program. Maybe
there's a track record there. Yes.
It's a track record. It's just not working here, especially with this coaching staff. These are all competent coaches, other than the Kirk Campbell elevation to offensive coordinator that could be questioned now. The rest of it,
and I've seen that a million times in this sport too. I saw this when I owned the Iowa State fan publication. Gene Chizik came in here. They gave him the job over Brian Kelly and Jim Harbaugh. Those were the three finalists for the job. Jim Harbaugh at San Diego, Brian Kelly at Cincinnati or at Central Michigan, and Gene Chizik, the DC at Texas. They gave the job to Gene because of how hard it is to recruit here and at Iowa State, and they thought, given his Big 12 ties, he'd bring some kids from Texas. He forms his first staff. What he does, he puts the band together, man. It's grad assistant reunion. The guys used to go golfing and drinking with, and that's what Sherrone's kind of done here. The defense is at least semi-competent, and because Wink isn't a great DC this year, but he's at least a professional level of DC. All right. On offense, Kirk Campbell's previous OC stint sucked at Old Dominion. First of all, I don't care how great you are at Old Dominion. Doesn't qualify you to be the OC at Michigan anyway. You don't jump from Old Dominion to Michigan. I don't care how great Old Dominion was. No, you don't ever do that. Ever. No. Got to be a job in between, let alone you sucked there. So those are decisions. Again, he made those decisions. Okay. And there's no track record here of success to bank on whatsoever. The only track record is actually what we're seeing, Mark.
And that's the reason why I'd get rid of him at the end of the year, as opposed to the coach, that even though it would be more disappointing if Matt Campbell or PJ Fleck walked in here and performed to these results, it'd be more surprising, more disappointing. There's a track record, and those guys have proven capable of running a big-time college football program. You just don't. I don't know that Sherrone Moore couldn't have a quarterback situation fixed for him by way of the transfer portal in the offseason and put together a 9-3 team next year. But everything's on the line. To your point,
we don't know. He might be able to. He might. Yeah. But we don't know that. Here's what I do know. Whatever quarterback we want, we're going to have to pay more for him than everybody else based on the track record of what's being seen this year, right? Because it's a little bit like, do you want to manage a convenience store in the suburbs, or do you want to manage one on 8 Mile? Okay. And if you're going to manage the one on 8 Mile, you'll get paid more than the one in the suburbs, because there's a certain level of risk factor on 8 Mile they don't have in the suburbs. You know what I'm saying, brother? And so, yeah. So now, whatever the going rate for quarterback, first of all, every quarterback in the portal is going to say they're coming to Michigan next year because it's going to drive up their rate, because we're going to have to pay more than any of our peer schools because we don't have a track record. This whole thing with Bryce Underwood, so we're going to get him to stay home now because we're willing to go ahead and play the game and pay the recruits, this urban legend on the internet. If I'm Bryce Underwood's parents, I'm like, I don't care if Michigan will pay twice what LSU is. LSU just developed a guy that went from Arizona State cast-off to Heisman Trophy winner and maybe Rookie of the Year and MVP of the NFL in the same season. Well, I mean, what the hell is this guy? What has this crew done? They didn't develop. It's pretty clear they can't develop quarterbacks. They had J.J. McCarthy. He developed them. That's pretty obvious. Okay, so I mean, if you want to go get anybody, what is the track record we have to sell? And I think that's a major concern that we have right now. There's not really any credibility in this program. And, I know I said at the beginning of the year, I'm totally zen. Well, it's because I didn't anticipate this was even conceivable. I thought in the back of my mind, I thought they could go 8-4, 7-5. Hell, I thought they were going to lose 2 games by October, in the first half of the year. But I did not think that this thing would be ever this mismanaged, completely mismanaged. And that is systemic. And as we saw with Rich Rod's first year, that's really hard to come back from.
And do we know that Jim Harbaugh truly, this could be the one knock on Harbaugh, that he endorsed Sherrone Moore for this position? And Sherrone Moore, to his credit, walked out there on game day for 3 consecutive games in November, high stakes games, and he led a victory. So they had a testing out period. It may be been a false one, as it appears now that it was as thin as tissue paper. It didn't mean anything much. But he had, the pilot episode, and he was able to make it all look great. Yeah, I just think you have to cut ties with him, and you got to go with a proven coach. You got to go with a Michigan-level head coach.
Mm-hmm. This is at worst a top 12 job in America. At worst. At worst. And it's now it might be consensus top 10, because let's face it, if you're not coaching in the SEC or the Big Ten now, you're in AAA. That's just the reality. Okay. So, everybody, Michigan fans put Jaden Davis in. I'm telling you right now, if I'm Jaden Davis's parents, you're not putting my kid in there. No. Nope. You're not putting my 18-year-old behind that offensive line to get murdered with a system that you don't even know what you're running. Okay. And I watched you guys, we're in week 7. You've got quarterbacks that are throwing balls into the dirt, against Illinois on bright, sunny fall days with no wind. Okay. No, you're not putting my son back in there I am not letting, Jack Sawyer build his NFL draft night highlight tape off of, doing to my kid what Jadeveon Clowney did to a 5'7", Michigan running back in the day. I'm not doing that. No, I don't trust you. I don't know how anybody would trust what they say. I mean, they had a Morion Walker on the bench all year long. They finally put him in. All he does is just run routes and get open every time he runs a route. Okay. Now we don't have anybody who can throw it to him, but he just started getting open in week 6. Where the hell was he in week 1, week 2, week 3? You know what I'm saying? I mean, why you'd have any trust for this outfit at all? And I think it's pretty clear that they just thought they could just kind of pick up where Jimmy left off with that same kind of culture. But the problem is you don't have that same kind of stature, right? You know what I'm saying? And so that the credibility just isn't there. And so they got punched in the mouth against Texas. And then it was very clear that they couldn't answer as a coaching staff. And then at that point, just like teams lose faith that they can win a game, I think you're watching the team lose faith as the season goes on in the coaches. And I just, if you're Ward Manuel, a year from now, you're the one writing the checks. Won't be collectives anymore. You're going to be the ones writing those checks with the house settlement now. And this when you own a business, Mark, when you're the one meeting the payroll, your perspective and paradigm has a tendency to shift and change real quick when that's money's coming out of your pocket, right? That could be money you would give yourself and you give it to somebody else. I don't know. I think this thing is in real trouble. I like Sherrone. I think he has a great presence. I really don't want to be here at the end of the year, but it kind of feels like, I know getting rid of a coach in year 1 on October 22nd seems weird, but it would have felt weird getting rid of Juwan Howard on January 22nd, just a few months after he had heart surgery too. And then the trend line just became pretty obvious that he had no answers. And my fear is, all the toughest games on our schedule, Mark, are still there. Ryan Day may hang 100 this time, might do it, So I think if I've told you for years, we played that game on that COVID season and Michigan, Jimmy gets lit up by that Ohio State team. He does not survive. He doesn't. And then we never have the 3 years we just had. I don't think there's any way Sherrone survives losing to Michigan State and just a complete and total depanting to Ohio State. Nor, as much as I like him personally, nor should he. I'll give you the last word.
Well, this team is what? Khalil Mullings and a...
When they give him the ball. When they decide to finally give him the ball. Yes. When they decide to do that, yeah.
He's a man. He's a beast. He showed that against USC, and he's done nothing but prove that when he gets the opportunity. Khalil Mullings and depending on your perception, a bad onside kick call. This team could be 2-5 possibly. So at least the hope is this situation is very decisive. It's not this middling. Oh, we were pretty good, 8-4. We could have been 10-2. Do we keep him? Don't we keep him? At least it's decisive. He failed miserably in key areas of preparing this team for the season, making the one critical decision that needed to be made in the quarterback room, and then the adjustments have just not been there. No development, no improvement, and this is what it is. So again, the optimism should be that this is decisive, and you move on, and you are a top. You only gave a 12 program. Wow, that's gracious.
Not program, job, because lots of factors go into job. For example, like you might think Michigan and Florida are the same job, but one state has no income tax and the other state it does. Okay, and so there's some. I think we'd all agree on what the top 10 or 12 jobs in America are. Michigan's in that group. How we'd rank them within that, dozen top jobs would differ, but we probably would all agree on what those top 12 jobs are. That's all I was saying.
Absolutely. And you don't even get the satisfaction, as you reference to a certain extent, of watching a young team develop and thinking, oh, I want to watch the young guys play. And even this coach is gone. We bring in another coach, a competent coach, and let's see how some of these freshmen and sophomores are going to play. You don't even get that satisfaction because you don't know that they're going to be around.
And that's going to be true for every program in this position until there are contracts. That is going to be true of every program in this position moving forward. That's just the reality. And there's really no incentive now to put young guys in and develop them because you don't know that you're just helping them put together tape for, with their agents going to get more than you can give them in the portal, right? That's just where we are now. Yeah. All right. Good to see. You know what? And let me close with this, Mark. It's why I'm so ecstatic, not just that we won the Natty, but that we did it last year. I don't agree with Joel Klatt at all. As much as I like Joel, I don't think we know for sure that the sport is heading into its golden era at all. Okay. And, previous generations thought horse racing and baseball were the best sports in America. Things can get soiled and get ruined. The NBA that you and I grew up watching, that was must see TV, even it was must see to watch the Atlanta Hawks and Dominique Wilkins play Larry Bird and the Celtics on a Tuesday night in January. Even if you lived in Ohio or Michigan, that was a must see. That NBA is gone. Okay, completely gone. Things can absolutely, that are cash cows, get mismanaged. Just ask IBM. It can happen. And so it might be better. I don't know. We might like it more. There might be more parity. Like this year, there doesn't look like there's a tier of teams that are better than everybody else, for example. So it might be better. Well, but it's not the sport that we grew up loving anymore. It's not. And so I was also ecstatic to see that we also won it the last year, that it was the sport as we knew and love it.
I hate to agree with you with that, Steve, but I think on a given Saturday, college football is giving us matchups that we can enjoy that we would not have been able to enjoy because of the conference consolidation. But that is the only positive aspect of any of this. And this is becoming extremely distasteful for your average fan out there who embraces the camaraderie and the amateur aspect of it that obviously is ceased to be.
Good stuff, brother. Talk to you later. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
You bet. This week's Twitter poll, X-Poll results. We asked you how many more games you think Michigan football will win this season. 46% of you said 1. 42% of you said 2. 12% of you keep hope alive. You said 3. And puff past that hopium, brother. I want some of what you have, at least till basketball starts, because that does look like it's going to be a fun season. That brings us to our feedback of the week from aptly named El Dicko. I have little confidence in Ward Manuel's ability to manage this football program well. Have to give him credit for canning Howard and hiring Dusty May. Can he perform such a feat with football? Seems like a lot to expect. I'll take the under, but this program blows. Yes, it does. I'll say this. Ward Manuel's paradigm shifted with the basketball job. We saw a level of go-getter there we have not seen before. He went and got the it coach. And maybe Dusty May was telling the truth when he said he really wanted Michigan and not Louisville all along, because Louisville is the better basketball program historically. Nevertheless, if Ward goes in there and makes a rinky-dink offer, doesn't demonstrate that we're going to put the resources behind a coach for him to be successful, you think Dusty May comes out of that saying, I like finishing 9th in the Big Ten over coaching at Louisville? Probably not. Probably not. So give Ward credit for that. And I'm just telling you, like I said to Mark, if you've never owned a business before, that first time you start writing out payroll checks out of your pocket, man, the paradigm shifts. And a year from now, Ward's going to be the one signing those checks with the revenue share. And it's not going to be NIL is double dipping into my trough. It's all going to be in the same trough. And you're going to sit there and say, why am I paying you to suck? Sherrone Moore needs to get to that first. And I think he's in way more trouble of not getting there than people understand, because they're still looking at this through the lens of what college sports used to be, or some hybrid lens that they haven't fully made the transition yet. But college sports, at least at the revenue level, are dead. These are pro sports now. And you wait and see, not this weekend against Sparty, but you wait and see. You lose on Saturday, you wait and see how much green's going to be in that stadium in 2 weeks for that Oregon game. And it's going to look like when Ohio State and Michigan State came over here in the Rich Rod era. And that'll get an athletic director's attention real quick. That'll get a university president's attention real quick. That'll get your boosters, and they're going to your NIL donors and saying, "Hey, give us millions to rebuild this roster." Well, that's an investment market. Why would I invest in this staff? What the hell have they done? That'll give Fox sports executives who paid, and CBS sports executives and NBC sports executives who paid all these billions for brands like Michigan to not suck. That'll also get their attention. Back at it again next week, right here on the channel. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review. Help us to find more Michigan fans just like you. That happens when you do that. We appreciate the kind words and the support as well. So thank you for all of that. Whether you're watching here on iTunes or on YouTube or listening on iTunes or elsewhere, you can follow us in between episodes at Michigan Podcast on X, at Michigan Podcast there. Until the next time, I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.